You're asking the wrong question, but I'll answer it anyway. Tibetan Mastiff versus Kangal. Who wins? Who's the better protector? Who's the king? That's what you want to know. And the answer is neither, because they were built for completely different jobs in completely different places, and comparing them is like asking whether a submarine or a helicopter is better at transportation. Depends where you're going. But since you're here for the fight, let's get into it. The Tibetan Mastiff isn't from Tibet. Well, it is, sort of. But the dogs you see at dog shows with the giant manes that cost $2 million in China, those aren't the working dogs from the Himalayas. Those are what happens when you take a livestock guardian, breed it for size and coat, and turn it into a status symbol for Chinese real estate developers who want a dog that looks like a lion. The real Tibetan Mastiff, the one that's been guarding monasteries and livestock in the mountains for 3,000 years, is smaller, leaner, and doesn't have a coat that requires an hour of brushing every day. It's 100 to 140 pounds. Thick fur because it lives at 15,000 feet, where the temperature drops below freezing most of the year. Independent, nocturnal. Bred to work alone or in pairs, guarding flocks from snow leopards and wolves without any human supervision. That last part matters. The Tibetan Mastiff doesn't wait for commands. It doesn't check in with you. It sees a threat, it handles it. End of transaction. The Kangal is Turkish. Livestock guardian. Same job, different continent. Bred in the Chivas region to protect sheep from wolves, jackals, and bears. 120 to 150 pounds. Shorter coat, longer legs, built for speed and endurance in a hot, dry climate instead of freezing mountains. The Kangal is also independent, but in a different way. It works with shepherds, not for them, with them. The shepherd sets the boundaries, and the dog patrols. The dog makes decisions within those boundaries. You don't micromanage a Kangal. You just point it at the flock and let it do what it was born to do. Both dogs were bred to kill wolves. That's the baseline. If you can't kill a wolf, you can't do the job. So both of them have the tools. Size, strength, bite force, endurance, and the psychological wiring that says, don't stop until the threat is dead. Now let's talk about what happens when they meet. They don't. That's the real answer. A Tibetan Mastiff lives in the Himalayas. A Kangal lives in Turkey. These dogs don't share geography. They don't share climate. They don't share breeding history. The only place they meet is in hypothetical internet arguments and maybe 1 or 2 dog shows where someone flew a Tibetan Mastiff halfway around the world to stand next to a Kangal and get judged by people who've never seen either breed do its actual job. But fine, let's say you put them in a situation. Neutral ground. Both dogs healthy, adult males, motivated. What happens? It's close. Closer than people think. The Tibetan Mastiff is heavier, thicker bone structure, more mass. That mane isn't just for show, it's protection. A wolf going for the throat on a Tibetan Mastiff has to get through 6 inches of dense fur and loose skin before it hits anything vital. That's evolved armor. The Kangal is faster. Longer legs, leaner build, bred to cover ground quickly in open terrain. The Tibetan Mastiff was bred for mountains and rocky outcrops where speed doesn't matter as much as sure-footedness. The Kangal was bred for plains where you need to close distance fast. Bite force. Everyone wants to talk about bite force. The Kangal supposedly hits 743 pounds per square inch. The Tibetan Mastiff supposedly hits 550 to 650. I don't trust either number, because nobody's actually measuring these dogs under real conditions. But let's say the Kangal bites harder. Does that win the fight? Not necessarily. Because the Tibetan Mastiff wasn't bred to bite and release. It was bred to bite and hold while snow leopards claw the hell out of it. Snow leopards have retractable claws and can disembowel a dog in one swipe. The Tibetan Mastiff's job is to take that hit and keep biting anyway. The Kangal was bred to bite and dominate. Different style. It goes for the kill faster, doesn't waste time. Efficient. A Kangal fighting a wolf doesn't drag it out. It gets the throat, crushes, moves on. So if these two actually fought, here's what I think happens. The Kangal lands the first bite because it's faster. The Tibetan Mastiff absorbs it because it's built to absorb damage. The fight turns into a grappling match. Both dogs are trying to get position on the throat. Both dogs are using their body weight. Both dogs have been bred to ignore pain and keep working. It comes down to conditioning. Which dog is in better shape? Which dog has more experience? Which dog gets lucky with the first grip? Over 10 fights, I'd give it to the Kangal 6 or 7 times. Not because it's stronger, because it's faster, and in a real fight, speed matters. The dog that lands the first solid bite usually wins. But that's a coin flip. 3 or 4 times out of 10, the Tibetan Mastiff's size and durability win. It takes the Kangal's best shot, weathers it, and grinds the fight out through sheer mass and endurance. Now let's talk about the question you should have asked instead. Which one's a better livestock guardian? Depends on the livestock, depends on the terrain, depends on the predator. Tibetan Mastiff excels in mountains, cold weather, isolated terrain where the dog needs to make decisions without human input for days at a time. It's slower to trust strangers, more territorial, more likely to treat anything unfamiliar as a threat. If you've got a remote property with rough terrain and you need a dog that doesn't need you, that's your dog. Kangal excels in open terrain, hot, dry climates, working with a shepherd who's actively managing the flock. The Kangal is more biddable than the Tibetan Mastiff. Not obedient, it's still a livestock guardian. It's not taking commands like a German shepherd. But it's more willing to work within a framework you set. If you've got flat land, hot summers, and you're actually out there working with the dog, the Kangal fits better. Predator type also matters. Both dogs can kill wolves. But a Tibetan Mastiff is specifically adapted to snow leopards, which hunt differently than wolves. Snow leopards are ambush predators. Silent. They don't announce themselves. The Tibetan Mastiff has to be alert to threats it can't hear coming. Kangals deal with wolves that hunt in packs. Different problem. Pack tactics require the dog to hold ground against multiple attackers and not get flanked. The Kangal's speed lets it reposition, keeps it from getting surrounded. Which one's harder to own as a pet? Both. Equally, in different ways. The Tibetan Mastiff is more aloof, doesn't care if you're home, doesn't need your approval. Nocturnal, so it's going to bark at 3 in the morning because that's when it's programmed to work. Good luck training that out. You can't. It's genetic. The Kangal is more social, but just as stubborn. It'll tolerate you. Might even like you. But it's not going to obey you just because you said so. You need to earn respect with a Kangal, and even then, it's going to make its own decisions about what's a threat and what isn't. If the Kangal decides your neighbor's dog is a problem, your opinion on the matter is irrelevant. Both dogs will kill other dogs if given the opportunity. Both dogs will challenge you if you try to force them into something they don't want to do. Both dogs require serious socialization, serious training, and serious management. And even with all that, they're never going to be labs. They're always going to be livestock guardians in a suburban house, wondering why you're not giving them a job. Neither of these dogs belongs in an apartment. Neither belongs with a first-time owner. Neither belongs with someone who wants a companion animal that's going to cuddle on the couch and play fetch. These are working dogs. They were bred to operate independently in hostile environments and kill things that would kill them. You don't turn that off just because the dog lives in your backyard now. So who's the king of the protectors? Whichever one you're standing next to when something actually threatens your property. Because in that moment, both of them will do exactly what they were bred to do for 3,000 years. And you'll be very glad they're on your side. The Kangal might win the fight on average, but the Tibetan Mastiff isn't losing sleep over it. Neither is the Kangal. They're too busy doing their jobs to care about your hypothetical matchup. Pick the one that fits your climate, your terrain, and your ability to manage a dog that doesn't think it works for you.